On a quiet day in September 2014, in the bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria, something happened that would shock not only the country, but the entire world. It began like any ordinary day around a popular religious centre known as the Synagogue Church of All Nations. People had gathered from different countries, hoping for prayers, healing, and spiritual guidance. Some had travelled thousands of kilometres, believing they were coming for hope, comfort, and miracles. But within moments, everything changed. A multi-storey guest house building inside the church compound suddenly collapsed. At first, people nearby did not understand what was happening. There was a loud cracking sound, followed by a violent collapse of concrete and metal. In seconds, what stood as a building moments earlier turned into a massive pile of rubble. Dust filled the air. People began screaming. Some ran for safety.
As rescue efforts continued into the following days, the scene of the collapsed building became even more intense. Emergency workers from different agencies worked alongside volunteers who had rushed in to help. Some used heavy machinery to lift broken slabs of concrete, while others worked carefully by hand, afraid that one wrong movement could bring down more debris on survivors who might still be trapped underneath. Every few minutes there was silence across the site. Everyone would stop and listen carefully, hoping to hear a faint voice calling for help from beneath the rubble. When such sounds were heard, even slightly, rescue teams would rush toward that exact point, carefully removing layers of debris in search of survivors. But as time passed, hope slowly began to reduce. The structure had collapsed in a way that made survival in some areas extremely difficult. Still, rescuers refused to give up. Outside the site, families gathered in large numbers. Many had traveled from different parts of Nigeria and even other countries, hoping to find their loved ones alive. Some held photographs tightly in their hands, showing images of the people they were searching for. Others simply stood in silence, staring at the destruction, unable to process what had happened. The emotional weight of the situation grew heavier each day. Some families received confirmation that their loved ones had been found injured and taken to hospitals. Others were told the heartbreaking news that their relatives had not survived. And for many, there was still no information at all. Hospitals across Lagos became crowded as injured victims were transported in ambulances. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, treating people with broken bones, internal injuries, and trauma caused by the collapse. The scale of the emergency stretched the city's medical system as more and more victims continued to arrive. As the rescue operation moved forward, attention also turned to understanding what caused the collapse in the first place. Structural engineers and investigators arrived at the site to examine what remained of the building. They studied the foundations, the remaining pillars, and the pattern of the collapse. Questions began to circulate widely. Was the building constructed properly? Were there structural warnings before the collapse? Could anything have been done to prevent it? These questions became central to the investigation that followed. Authorities began collecting testimonies from survivors and witnesses. Some described hearing strange cracking sounds before the building gave way. Others said they noticed unusual movements in the structure in the days before the collapse. These accounts were taken seriously as investigators tried to reconstruct the events leading up to the disaster.
In the months that followed the collapse, official investigations continued as authorities worked to determine the exact cause of the disaster. Structural engineers, government officials, and safety inspectors reviewed the remains of the building and examined construction materials, design plans, and maintenance records. The goal was to understand whether the collapse was caused by structural failure, poor construction practices, or a combination of factors. As the investigation progressed, reports and expert opinions pointed towards serious concerns about the building's structural integrity. Attention focused on whether the structure had been designed or modified in a way that could not safely support its own weight. These findings led to wider discussions about construction standards and enforcement of building codes in rapidly growing cities. Legal and administrative actions followed as authorities attempted to hold responsible parties accountable. However, like many large-scale disasters, the process was complex and involved multiple layers of investigation, testimony, and legal review. Over time, the focus also shifted toward preventing similar tragedies in the future. One of the most important outcomes of the incident was the renewed attention on building safety regulations in Nigeria. Officials and professional bodies emphasized the need for stricter inspections, better enforcement of construction laws, and improved accountability for public structures. The goal was to ensure that buildings intended to host large numbers of people would meet proper safety standards before being used. For the families affected, however, no investigation or policy discussion could undo what had happened. Many lost loved ones, while others were left with injuries that changed their lives permanently. Survivors continued to share their experiences, describing not only the moment of collapse, but also the emotional and physical recovery that followed. Over time, the site itself became a symbol of remembrance. For many, it served as a reminder of how quickly tragedy can strike and how important safety, responsibility, and preparedness are in preventing loss of life. The synagogue church building collapse of 2014 remains one of the most widely discussed structural disasters in modern Nigerian history. It is remembered not only for the scale of the tragedy, but also for the global attention it received and the conversations it sparked about safety standards in public buildings. Even years later, the event continues to be referenced in discussions about engineering responsibility and disaster prevention. In the end, this story is not just about a building that fell. It is about the lives that were changed in an instant, the families who continue to remember their loved ones, and the lessons that societies must carry forward to prevent similar tragedies in the future. It is a reminder that safety is not optional, and that every structure built for people must be treated with care, responsibility, and respect.